Hi, thanks for joining me for a discussion on Canadian copyright law and how it affects students' rights to create photocopies. Since we've strategically placed these postcards by the university photocopiers, I'm going to assume this is of interest to you. By the end of this video, the goal is that you will be able to describe Canadian copyright law as it applies to the principle of fair dealing when making photocopies, define the steps involved in conducting a fair dealing analysis, and apply this knowledge when making photocopying decisions. The Canadian Copyright Act is the law that protects the rights of a creator of any work as having the sole right to produce or reproduce the work or any substantial part thereof in any material form whatever. However, the Act also includes an exception known as fair dealing, which allows individuals to copy or use a substantial portion of a work for the purpose of research, private study, education, parody, satire, criticism, review, or news reporting, as long as the source is properly cited where appropriate. Canada is actually fairly unique in enshrining such users' rights in law. Why does the Copyright Act matter? It matters for creators because it allows them to maintain ownership of their work and receive ongoing and appropriate compensation for it. It matters for users because it protects those who reproduce or use a work for one of the 8 purposes listed earlier. This is a benefit for a whole society as it continues the dissemination and creation of new works and ideas. But what's the bottom line? Maybe you're hoping for a concise rule like you're allowed to copy up to 10% of a book or one full chapter. You may even have heard of the 10% rule before, but it's not law. This is a guideline that is commonly used by education institutions, including the University of Alberta, and applies specifically to staff making copies for institutional purposes. However, things are more subjective for private individuals, which is both a blessing and a curse. You're not limited to these guidelines when making copies for personal use, but the onus is on you to evaluate whether your copying constitutes fair dealing. Thankfully, the University of Alberta Copyright Office has developed a guide for how to conduct a fair dealing analysis. We'll go through it together quickly, but I encourage you to visit their website to learn more. Step 1. Is your use of the work a fair dealing purpose? Is it for research, private study, education, parody, satire, criticism, review, or news reporting? If yes, move on to the next step. If no, then you should contact the copyright owner for permission first. Step 2. Considerations for assessing fairness. Is the dealing more or less fair? To answer this question, you'll need to be aware of and consider the 6 fairness factors for making a copy. These are purpose, character, amount, nature, effect, and alternatives to the dealing. Purpose refers to why you want to make a copy. If you've answered yes to step 1, you should be good. Character refers to how you plan to use it. Is this for personal or monetary gain? Amount refers to how much of the work you plan to copy. Only copy what you need. Nature refers to the kind of work you are copying and the initial intent of the creator. Are your plans respectful of these intentions? Effect refers to how your work could affect the original work. For example, if you try selling a slightly revised version of the same work, that could have a negative financial effect. Alternatives refers to whether you have looked for other options before reproducing this work, such as non-copyright protected or open source materials. The last 3 questions in step 2 are pretty straightforward. Do you really need it? Don't make copies just for the fun of it. Can you find an alternative? If you can find a public domain or open license source that gives you the same information, then go with that. Do you want to modify the material instead of reproducing the original? Remember, even if you won't be reproducing it word for word in your own work, you still need to decide if what you're using it for is fair dealing, and always cite your sources. As a student, most of what you will be copying is for your own personal study, and therefore it falls easily within fair dealing. The point of this is to help you develop critical thinking and reflection skills, not to overwhelm you. Now it's your turn. Take a few seconds to think about what you were just planning to copy and run through the fair dealing analysis. Pause the video if you need to. Thanks for watching. I hope this video helps you think critically about your photocopying going forward. Please take a postcard home. It has an adapted version of the fair dealing analysis questions and some further resources on copyright and fair dealing. A copy of the video transcript is also available at the reference desk. And finally, yes, there is a chance to win prizes. Go to the reference desk and ask for a copy of the feedback form to enter.